So we've just been delivered one of the weirdest weekends in boxing. It was started off with the Times Square card featuring Ryan Garcia and then ended with the Vegas card that featured Canelo. Both of them had very interesting performances, along with the card to follow it. So let's talk about it. The Ring magazine has been breaking the mould of innovation lately when it comes to wacky locations for boxing cards. After the rumoured Alcatraz card fell through, we then head towards New York inside the middle of Times Square. This was touted as a super card as it had Ryan Garcia, Devin, Haney and Teofimo Lopez all fighting on the same card, stacked with opponents. Teofimo Lopez had a fight with Arnold Barboza, who is recently coming off his win over Jack Catterall. Devin Haney had his fight with Jose Ramirez for some reason. And then footing the bill was Ryan Garcia making his return against Rolly Ramiro. I can never get this guy's name right on the first try. Rolly Ramiro. And for those that did watch the event, everything went horribly wrong. In a massive upset, Ramiro managed to defeat Ryan Garcia by a 12-round unanimous decision, in possibly the most bizarre way possible. First, let's bring up the venue, because I think it's impossible to ignore the elephant in the room. This was meant to be a grand-scale event that was open to the public in the middle of Times Square, which is New York's biggest attraction. Let's look at the concept posters leading up to the fights. A massive stage for all of these fighters. But instead, the ring was surrounded by a big red wall and there was about 50 people there, all of them which were journalists. This ruined the atmosphere immediately. Yes, the scenery was good with the backdrop of Times Square, but there was no audience. You could count the crowd on one hand. It was mainly just journalists and the broadcast team. It wasn't in a venue, so there was no uproarious crowd, there were no bright lights, there wasn't even a ring ramp. Instead, the fighters drove in vehicles, which to the credit of the event was actually a pretty cool idea. Ryan Garcia came in on the Batmobile, even though he wasn't really Batman on the night. Devin Haney was dropped off in something that looked like Bill Haney designed it, and then Whittington, who was one of the undercard fighters, didn't even try and just booked a cab. Yep, no flashing lights, no fancy brands, he just booked a taxi into Times Square. That's true grassroots boxing. Now going into the fight, Ryan Garcia was expected to easily beat Ramiro. He was just coming off that huge Devin Haney win, which was struck off due to a failed drug test, and this was the event to get the rematch going. That's why Devin Haney is underneath him on the card. But Ryan Garcia was beaten to the bell. As soon as round 1 began, you could see the tentative nature of Ryan Garcia. He was not the same fighter he was a year ago. Round 1 was a feeling out process. Ryan Garcia established his jab to get his distance going, whilst Ramiro was tightening up his defence. There was no showboating like what you'd usually see in a Ryan Garcia fight. He just popped his jab out and got to work. We forgave it as an audience and chalked it up to ring rust after being a year out of the ring. Oh boy, it was not ring rust. Round 2 was the beginning of the end for this fight. He barely threw the left hook which he is famous for. The same hook that gave Devin Haney a world of trouble in their last fight. Then the big moment arrived. 2 sweeping left hooks that sent Ryan Garcia down to the canvas. Now if this entire venue wasn't dead of an audience, you'd see the roof come off. A totally unexpected knockdown from Ramiro, giving him a 10-8 round. Ryan Garcia completely checked out at this point. He was a total shell of himself. He became gun shy, tentative, and just didn't have any of the combinations to throw together. It was his worst performance he's possibly ever done in his entire career. Even worse than the Tank fight when he was ultimately knocked out by a body shot. Ramiro wasn't that great either. He just had a way better game plan than Garcia. He kept his right hand glued to his chin to avoid that left hook, before throwing his shots over the guard to hit Garcia. The knockdown in round 2 certainly did not help Garcia's case. It made him respect Ramiro's power. The fight came to an entire halt after the 6th round. Neither fighter wanted to engage, neither fighter wanted to actually get in there and try and close the show. It was a safe fight for both really, but especially for Ryan Garcia. He just threw his jab out and he did not want to be there. It was borderline embarrassing for his career. He got cracked super early on in the fight and he wanted nothing to do with the exchanges after that. Compare this to the Luke Campbell fight where he was also floored in the 2nd round, yet Ryan Garcia got back up, carried on throwing and eventually got the knockout win. So why did he not do that here? Why was he so tentative and gun-shy in this fight? Couple of reasons. There's a high chance he completely underestimated Ramiro, thinking it was an easy touch and he could just throw his jabs out and eventually line up the left hook. He just could not break that defence. I do not think the venue helped here. Ryan Garcia is a fighter that thrives on chaos, thrives on a massive live audience backing him. He needed that push from a crowd, and there was no crowd in this venue. Or, at a more blaring flaw, there is not much public information on Ryan Garcia's failed drugs test from last year. Whether it was an accident or not, we don't know that. But this fight really does not help his case. He was an animalistic fighter that was timing his shots beautifully right on the chin of the world champion at the time. He scored 3 knockdowns, but Devin Haney was on the cameras 5 separate times throughout that entire fight. Then after the fight, Ryan Garcia pops positive for a drug called Ostarine. It is not a steroid, but the effects are damn close to it. So after a year hiatus and he returns to his card with stringent drug testing on it, he performs like that. Yeah. I'm not accusing Ryan Garcia of anything, I'm just using the information that Varda put out there. It was a completely different fight. I'm still confused to this day what happened. Ryan was the overwhelming favourite. He was meant to knock out Ramiro, then go straight to the negotiations for the Devin Haney rematch. Which, speaking of, his fight was before this. Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez. What an absolute joke. This is a damper on both fighters' careers here. Whilst Ryan Garcia was unable to engage, Devin Haney straight up didn't want to and was on his bike the whole fight. This fight broke the CompuBox record for the least amount of punches thrown ever in a 12-round fight. That means each fighter averaged 15 punches per round. Not punches landed, just punches thrown. Devin Haney was absolutely terrified to engage. It's like he was haunted from the old Ryan Garcia from a year ago. He was miles away from Ramirez. Every time when he'd come in to engage, he would throw one jab out and then quickly move away straight away. Ramirez was terrible. Let's just put that out there. He's an old man, slow as anything, had no shot combinations at all, could not close the distance at any point in the fight. So Devin Haney was just free to just run rings around him. Yet he was still somewhat trying to apply the pressure to the much younger, fit, previous champion that is Devin Haney. Honestly, it's probably one of the worst fights I've ever seen. I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning UK time to watch this event, and I nearly went back to bed. I never want to watch this fight again. It's the sweet science of hit and don't be hit, which is exactly what Haney did. He hit and he was not hit. He got to the 12th round and he won by a decision. But he did not go there to fight. He went there to box. He went there to survive. He's going to need to break out of that mentality very quickly, or people aren't going to tune in to watch a Devin Haney fight anymore. His highest pay-per-view was when he was getting beat up for 12 rounds straight. People do not like Devin Haney. He was getting booed on the way to the ring. He was booed throughout the entire build-up and the entire press conference. This was Haney's golden opportunity to really make a statement after 6 straight years of decisions. But he was extremely tentative and was fighting negatively the entire fight. You can imagine die-hard boxing fans going to their casual friends to recommend this card. Now imagine if this was the first boxing card they've ever watched. They're not coming back to watch this sport. Yes, there's a sweet science to everything, but you've also got to put on a show. We can owe all of that to Teofimo Lopez. This was the only decent fight on the entire card, and it was actually a very difficult fight for Teofimo to take. This fight was a lot closer than what the commentators and the judges had it as. It was quite the technical showdown with that Teofimo showboating spice. Both Lopez and Barboza went blow for blow this entire fight, but Teofimo did get the nod by the judges. But Barboza did make a strong account of himself in this fight. He showed that he has a granite chin and very solid defence. Teofimo Lopez was just too fast for Honor Barboza, which is a surprise because Barboza is usually the quicker one in the ring, and Teofimo is coming off a couple of bad performances himself, including his loss to Kambosos. Now's the perfect time to right that wrong in my opinion. But what is next for Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, who both put in the worst performances of their career? Well, money talks, and I think that rematch still happens. There is still an unbelievable amount of hype that would regenerate from that rematch, especially since the first one was struck off. Devin Haney did still win his fight. He might grow more confidence from that, and Ryan Garcia cannot stay out of the spotlight. He'll have that bit between his teeth and he will want to show what he's really capable of. He will want to show that that fight was not a fluke. He has admitted it himself. He was bawling his eyes out on the way back from Times Square. He does care, even though on the night it didn't seem like he did. As for Teofimo Lopez, well, I think he is going to unify the belts with Rolly Ramiro. That wasn't the only Mexican trying to unify on the weekend. We also had Canelo versus William Skull, and this event wasn't any better. This is what happens when you feed B-list fighters to pay-per-view superstars. You get some of the worst fights imaginable. Are you seeing a pattern here? Because of the mess that is the 4-belt era in boxing, you need to fight the champions to become undisputed. Unfortunately, not every sanctioning body is up to scratch. After winning a vacant title, William Skull became the IBF Super Middleweight Champion. Nobody knows who William Skull is. He was given a vacant title after the old champion was unable to defend it. Who was that old champion? Well, it was Canelo. The whole belt situation in boxing is a different can of worms on its own. So what happened in this fight that made it so universally hated? Well, nothing. Nothing happened in this fight. We're setting back-to-back records for the least amount of punches thrown in a 12-round bout. First it was Devin Haney, then it was Ryan Garcia straight afterwards, and then the next day it's Canelo. 3 records broken in 2 days, and they're not good records. There was absolutely zero incentive for Canelo to actually go after Skull in this fight. He's getting paid a fortune to fight this guy that's not really much of a threat. So he just remained on his back foot, he would jab and patter around, and he would just didn't need to throw because Skull didn't throw first. And when he did, he missed. This was an undisputed fight with a massive asterisk on it, and it only happened because Skull had one of the other belts. Skull's resume is terrible. He's beaten nobody. This was a double win for both fighters and a complete cash out. Canelo got the belt back, and William Skull could say that he did 12 rounds with Canelo. Both Canelo and Skull had a round each where they did not land a single punch. That is borderline unheard of for an undisputed fight. Usually in videos like this I would go back and analyse the fight round by round to see what truly happened. But there is nothing to analyse here. Every round was the same. Something's happened with the Saudi Arabian money tap lately that has just made people completely scared to fight. This is no exception to the undercard of this fight as well. There was a heavyweight fight on this card that was mostly ignored throughout the entire press. It was Martin Bakole versus Efe Ajagba for the IBF Eliminator. This fight was better. Once Martin Bakole finally put down the pizzas and decided to get back into the gym, we were in for an interesting fight here against 2 heavyweight contenders. Whilst Martin Bakole did come into this fight looking like a bag of milk, Efe Ajagba did stay in shape waiting for this opportunity. We all know Martin Bakole does not have the greatest gas tank, but we watch him for the vicious early knockouts that we can find, still riding the high of that Jared Anderson fight, where he looked incredible. Now he didn't necessarily return back to those heights, he still came in very overweight, even for a heavyweight, but he was better hydrated this time, and he had the training under his belt from an actual camp. Martin Bakole used his front forward pressure to use his much bigger size against Ajagba to try and wear him down slowly, then go for the knockout. Meanwhile, Ajagba remained patient, remained on the back foot and tried to dance around Bakole to try and tire him out. It was a game of attrition. Yes, Ajagba was fighting in negatives, which is exactly what I criticised Devin Haney for, but at least Ajagba actually threw a punch. This is slightly different to how I predicted it. I expected Bakole to put his foot on the gas immediately, as that is when he's at his strongest, where he's fully energised. Then I expected Ajagba to slowly wear him down, tire him out and then get the finish later on. But instead, actually the complete opposite happened. Martin Bakole was very patient and collected at the start, but Ajagba was winning rounds against him. Ajagba took advantage of his range early, which forced Bakole to slow himself down and instead wait for openings to attack, like he did against Jared Anderson. Ajagba was aware of this plan, so he moved himself around the ring constantly to avoid any of those shots landing. But as a consequence of this defense, he tired out in the middle rounds, and that's when Martin Bakole started to take over. It became a slugfest after that, which Bakole was automatically going to win due to his size. Then the tides were turned quickly in round 8 as Ajagba nearly went out on his feet. Thunderous hands coming from Bakole as he pushed Ajagba right against those ropes and started wailing on him. Most other heavyweights would have gone down to these shots, so fair play to Ajagba for holding himself. That's when Ajagba knew he needed to move his feet again. So for the last 2 rounds he was on his bike. He would jab and hook and then move himself out the way immediately before Bakole could answer to it. That is how you beat a guy as big as Bakole. You need to keep moving, keep that head off the centre line. Regardless of this fight ended in a majority draw, with one of the judges scoring it 96-94 to Ajagba. I think this result was fair. Nobody necessarily won this fight. Munjaya and Surace also had their rematch on this card, and it was more of the same thing from the main event. So unfortunately, overall, it was a pretty disappointing weekend in boxing. But it had ended on one positive note. Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford in September in Las Vegas. 2 pound-for-pound giants finally putting the question to bed, who is the greatest of this era? This was the plan all along. However, Crawford needs to add some significant weight to reach the super middleweight limit. So what a better time to unify the belts and put a story behind this mega fight. It's amazing to think that just a month before this announcement that Jake Paul versus Canelo was in the works. Now hopefully we can see this fight live up to the expectations, exactly what Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn did. Please, let's not have any more nights like this in boxing.